In this video, we will be looking at an alternate scenario in the What If Civilization Started Over series, where Mesopotamia wins the Great Conquest of episode 17. This video was voted on in a channel poll, so if you want to decide the videos that I post, be sure to vote on those. We begin at the start of episode 17. The king of the Mesopotamians is dead, and his sons are fighting for the throne. In our timeline, they set up a duel, which the imperialist brother won, starting off the conquest. However, here, the supporters of the democratic brother manage to convince the governing body that he is more eligible for the throne, citing his brother's possible mental illness. The governing body accepts this, and the democratic brother is placed on the throne. This infuriates the imperial brother, and especially his supporters, as they feel he is a better fit for king. However, during the democratic king's rule, multiple bad events happen that sway the population in support of the imperialist brother. A scandal takes place between the king and a mistress, maybe possibly perhaps creating an illegitimate heir. The country also sees economic downturn, as the king's attempt to improve relations with other countries pretty much just consists of giving them money. These factors eventually lead to uprisings in support of the imperialist brother. The king was able to stabilize the country for a short time, until he has the ingenious idea of assassinating the imperialist brother. The assassination, however, is unsuccessful, and this causes the imperialist brother to rally a full-on revolution, with the aim of replacing the king. The war eventually turns to the favor of the imperial brother, whose forces capture the capital, execute the king, and put the imperialist brother in place. It is here where he makes a speech, announcing his conquest. This civil war changes one thing that will completely change the outcome of the war. The king is now more knowledgeable about fighting, and will be able to create better logistics on their fronts. It also makes much more of the population very nationalistic, making more people sign up to the military. Now, let's begin the conquest. Firstly, just like in our timeline, the Mesopotamians attack Caucasia. The country is obliterated by Mesopotamia, and is fully annexed. Here, we see something the Mesopotamians didn't do properly in our timeline, assimilating the land into Mesopotamia. This makes the country much more stable. Next up, Mesopotamia launches an invasion of Jeddah. After the invasion, the troops move into Saudia. From here, the Mesopotamians move further south into Hania, in order to gain control of the strait connecting the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. To complete this, they also invade Eritrea. Now with control of a vital area of water, they begin setting up large trade outposts. This heavily boosts the Mesopotamian economy, and further improves the popularity of the king. The second wave of expansion begins as the Mesopotamians cross the border into Egypt and storm through the country. They continue down the Nile basin and invade Sudan, also invading through the new Eritrean land. After this, the troops move north to Libya, and once the country is invaded, it is fully annexed. It is here where we see a halt in the Mesopotamian expansion, as they focus on assimilating their large amounts of new land. Once this period is finished, the Mesopotamians set up plans to invade the Circle Alliance. They are aware that India and Caspia will also most likely join the war to gain land, so they understand they have to act quickly, especially in the north to keep Caspia weak. They launch a rapid invasion, quickly moving around the Caspian Sea. By the time Caspia enters the war, most land has already been taken by Mesopotamia. In the south, India takes a similar amount of land as our timeline. In the peace treaty, we see a much more favorable deal for the Mesopotamians, and they gain much more land around the Caspian Sea. It is at this point, many nations in the world are realizing that Mesopotamia will not stop expanding anytime soon, and they begin to plan a coalition. Meanwhile, Mesopotamia invades Greece and Crete. This is a breaking point, as many nations cut relations with the Mesopotamians, seeing them as extremely aggressive. However, Mesopotamia is not finished just yet. But first, the Mesopotamians take a second break from expansion. They heavily focus on their technology, and quickly become the most technologically advanced country, using their massive wealth to finance their research. The Mesopotamians now launch an attack on Carthage, bringing the Triangle Alliance into the war. However, as Mesopotamian troops march on the city of Carthage, a coalition forms, wanting an end to the expanse. These countries include Rome, France, Ukraine, Montenegro, and finally, Caspia. Now, while this is still a very large coalition, it is important to note that Abyssinia never joined the war, freeing up a large front line for the Mesopotamians. Now, let's begin the fighting. First, in Carthage, Mesopotamia, instead of continuing the invasion like our timeline, holds off the front to fight the other nations. This is a great strategy, as it will mean the other fronts go better for Mesopotamia. The first front they focus on is Rome and Montenegro. The two nations are quickly wiped off of the map. In the north, Ukraine is invaded up the Caucasian land, and Mesopotamian troops quickly move around the Sea of Azov. Now, in the east, unlike our timeline, Mesopotamia manages to hold off Caspia, as they are not as strong as in our timeline. In the Balkans, in coordination with Mesopotamia, the Farmers' Union joins the war. This goes well, until Poland and Belarus join the war. An interesting thing to note, however, is that Muscovy decides not to join the war, unlike our timeline. The Farmers' Union is pushed back for a short while, until Mesopotamian reinforcements arrive. This goes so well that Poland is cut off from Belarus. In Africa, the Mesopotamians launch a surprise attack against the Triangle Alliance. They see major land and naval victories on the North African coast, and now they are even nearing Gibraltar. Back up north, Poland capitulates and the capital of Belarus is captured. The capital of Ukraine is also now in danger, as Mesopotamian troops reach Crimea, and the Farmers' Union invades from the west. At this point, it seems Mesopotamia is guaranteed to win the war. However, something happens. India enters the war. Just like in our timeline, India joins the war, as they feel threatened by the new strong foe on their border. Immediately, Mesopotamia recreates a defensive front line in North Africa, and forces Belarus into capitulation. The Indian forces march across the border of Mesopotamia in coordinates with Caspia. They see major success, and even make a landing in the Emirate exclave of Arabia. The push continues, until African and Balkan forces arrive, which stalemate the front. At this point, the Mesopotamians are fully relying on the Farmers' Union to defeat Ukraine, so they can send troops to the Persian front to help out Mesopotamia. The battle that would decide the course of the war would be the Battle of Mykolaiv. Farmerian forces moved in from the west, and began to take parts of the city. However, a Ukrainian force moved in from the north in an attempt to outflank them. The Farmerian forces were able to hold off the Ukrainian troops, before encircling them from the north. This heavily weakened the Ukrainian forces, causing them to lose the battle. After this, the Farmers' Union marched on Crimea, and took the Ukrainian capital, causing them to capitulate. This is an excellent victory for the Mesopotamians, as now with Farmerian troops, they are able to push back India and Caspia. The Mesopotamians move in from the north of Caspia, and are eventually able to encircle the entire sea. From here, they also approach the Caspian capital. The Mesopotamians move down in the south to reclaim their land. They continue on into Indian land too, and are able to encircle Indian forces on their exclave, as they recapture it. In Caspia, the capital is captured. As this happens, however, the Triangle Alliance breaks through the front line in Africa. Luckily, however, this doesn't last long, as reinforcements soon arrive. Back in Asia, after Caspia refuses to surrender despite revolts from the people, a revolution takes place, leading to Caspia collapsing. This allows Mesopotamia to fully focus on India, who after getting blitzed, surrenders due to a lack of faith. Mesopotamia has now won the Persian front, and troops now arrive in Africa. Carthage is quickly invaded, and after a Gibraltar naval battle, Mesopotamia makes a landing in Andalusia, leading to the surrender of the Triangle Alliance, and the end of the war. Now, let's take a look at the peace treaty. In the peace treaty, we have the Mesopotamians becoming an absolutely giant empire, stretching from the Atlantic to Central Asia. In Iberia, Andalusia loses Gibraltar, and is split in two. Carthage and Rome are fully annexed by Mesopotamia, and Montenegro is split by Mesopotamia and the Farmers' Union. Speaking of the Farmers' Union, they gain Polish, Belarusian, and Ukrainian land, and gain a puppet state in the remains of Poland. In Ukraine, the country is completely destroyed, as Mesopotamia takes all the coastal land and convert the northern remnants into a puppet. Finally, in Central Asia, Mesopotamia gains all land around the Caspian Sea, and land from India, better connecting with their exclave, and Caspia is also split up. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was a very fun video to make, and I hope you liked the more detailed city battle I added in. Make sure to like and subscribe.